Was Saturday one of the best playoff days ever? Is it all over for the defending champs? And is this Josh Allen's year? All of that next on This Week in the NFL Wildcard Edition. We're going to start off with the first game on Saturday where we talk about the Rams and the Panthers. This was a really good game, and it was not a game that people thought was going to be. The Rams were able to beat the Panthers 34-31. I don't think the Panthers looked all that great to finish out their season, but we have known them to be a team that can upset a team every now and then. Or not every now and then. They consistently upset teams throughout this entire season. And I think overall they have a good structure. I think Dave Canales is a really good coach. I think they have very decent weapons. Jalen Coker and Tet McMillan look really good. Xavier Legette can be an extra guy. I don't know about him. You obviously have Tommy Tremble, who I think is pretty good. Your run game isn't bad. Your offensive line is really good. And if Bryce Young can be a system quarterback where he kind of just plays game manager, I really think this team has a chance to be a really good team. But you have to see Bryce Young be consistent. With how inconsistent he is, he's always going to set the ceiling for this team with how inconsistent he is. If he can be more consistent, we can really see this team flourish. And I really like the system and the identity that this team has set up for themselves right now. But overall, I'm going to talk about the Panthers and their off season later on this week. So like and subscribe to go see that video. On to the Rams. I don't think this was a great showing from them. I think they're much better than this, and I think that maybe it's a Panthers problem because they had a problem with the Panthers the first time that they saw them. But this could just be a Rams problem. When you're able to pressure Matthew Stafford, you can stifle this defense or this offense a little bit, and although they scored 34 points, I kind of have a little bit of a question about them going against some of the better defenses left in the playoffs when they see them in the AFC or in the NFC Championship. Next week, though, they have a decent matchup. The Bears defense is not looking good right now, and we'll talk about them more in a minute. But I think it's a decent matchup for them. I think defensively, though, it's going to be a really tough matchup for the Rams because their defensive line is good, but their corners are just very suspect. In this game against the Panthers, they were nothing special. The Bears are a team that are going to be able to exploit that. They have the wide receivers and they have the infrastructure to do that. The Bears offensive line and Caleb Williams are going to be able to neutralize this pass rush in a way because Caleb Williams is so good at escaping from the pocket, and that offensive line is much improved from years prior. It's just going to be a really tall task for this defense. I think their offense can do it because obviously the Bears don't have the best defense in the league. They have a really turnover reliant defense, and it didn't look very good against the Packers. The Rams also had a penalty problem in this game, which is something that they don't normally deal with. They just need to execute their offense better, and they can't do the little tiny penalties because the Bears will be able to exploit it next week. And I think that's a lot better of a matchup than some people are going to give it credit for now that we've seen what we've seen from each team so far. The next game was the Bears and the Packers. The Bears coming back from a massive deficit and winning 31-27. Again, we're going to talk about the Packers in a video coming out in a couple days, but the real big problem with the Packers is they haven't been able to close out these games against the Packers, and it might be a Matt LaFleur problem. He's just had a really tough time being able to situationally play call as good as he can, as well as play a good coach and be able to put them in situations to win these games and be able to close out these games. I think he'd be a fine offensive coordinator, but as far as a head coach, he hasn't been able to consistently win playoff games. He just makes very questionable decisions every single time we're in the playoffs. Just cannot lose that game in that fashion to your division rival in the first round of the playoffs. That was just the biggest possible setback you could have, and that made Matt LaFleur's seat way hotter than it already was. But I think this is a very, very big game for the Bears. Even if you don't win next week, what you do now know is obviously Ben Johnson is the guy and Caleb is the guy. Caleb is legit. There is a reason that Caleb Williams had Patrick Mahomes comps coming out of USC. It is because of how good of a creator he is. We didn't think that we would see a talent as good as Patrick Mahomes is at creating. He is unbelievable. Off platform, on platform, no matter what, Patrick Mahomes does not need a base to throw the football. He can generate torque just from the flick of the wrist. He can generate torque from his torso mid-air. He's able to absolutely whip the ball, and he doesn't need his legs on the ground to do it. We never thought we'd see a player like that again. And Caleb Williams rivals it. He might even be better at it. Right now, Caleb is not as good in structure as Patrick Mahomes is. Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL because he can do both. I think Caleb Williams is massively improved in that area, but he's not quite there yet. But out of structure, he just might be the best quarterback in the NFL because he can make absolutely any throw with any platform, with any arm angle. He can be so creative outside of the pocket. He might be the most creative outside of the pocket, and that is just such a weapon for a quarterback, especially in today's NFL. Their ability to generate big plays has just made them such a juggernaut in the third and fourth quarter, because when you're in those first and second quarters, you're going up against the scripted defense. They know what you're trying to do. They know you're trying to get those big plays. It's harder to get the offense going when you're looking for it like that. In the second half, in the fourth quarter, when we're getting to more unscripted things that are happening in these games, it's harder to guard them because they have all the weapons in the world. Colston Loveland looks like a star. This run game is so dynamic, and Caleb Williams is so electric. It's absolutely impossible to stop this offense when they're playing at their best. And I genuinely think they can really give the Rams a run for their money next week and possibly even win that game. The next game we had in the weekend was the Bills and the Jaguars. The Bills were able to beat the Jaguars 27-24. The Jags' main problem in this game to me was they weren't utilizing how effective they were on the ground. They needed to run the ball more because they needed to stop giving the ball back to Josh Allen. They were scoring too quick. And obviously, I think that Trevor Lawrence, both of his turnovers, I think, were his fault in throws that he probably shouldn't have made. Obviously, the first one way worse than the second one. But I think overall his game was pretty good. I saw a lot of good layered throws and just great athletic plays. He wasn't horrible in this game. I don't think he was exactly the reason why the Jags lost. The underutilization of the run game was a huge reason because they kept giving the ball back to Josh Allen as fast as they possibly could. They weren't running out the clock, and I just think that was a terrible idea. Bashal Tuten had 47 yards on like 3 runs in the first half of this game, and you barely give it to him for the rest of the game and kind of just cut him out of the playbook for whatever reason. And I just hate that happened. But overall, it just seems like young mistakes for them that they can really make a splash next year and be really good. But they just made a lot of young team mistakes. This game for the Bills really gives them a lot of confidence going into the rest of the playoffs because you think you can beat pretty much anybody. The Jags were one of, if not the most well-rounded team in the playoffs, and you went in there and played very well. I think the Jags do have a problem in their secondary. Now you're going against Denver, who has a much better secondary than I think Jacksonville has. Jacksonville was just so bad in this game, and leaving Elijah Moore wide open on that play earlier in the game, there was just things that can't happen from this secondary. Josh Allen is going to be able to exploit this. This was one of his best playoff performances, and he's one of the best playoff performers ever. Even in the games that he's lost against Patrick Mahomes, he's outplayed him. I don't think I've genuinely seen a performance from Josh Allen specifically in the playoffs where I'm like, yeah, he was the reason they didn't win that game. He always steps up in the playoffs. He was absolutely elite in this game. I'm pretty sure he threw for 300 yards on like 80%. I think next week will be their toughest matchup left in the playoffs before the Super Bowl. Obviously, they could face the Texans, the Patriots, The Broncos, I think, might be the AFC Championship game and maybe not. I think if the Broncos move on to the AFC Championship game, it'll be harder for them to get to the Super Bowl than it would for the Bills. But if the Bills beat the Broncos, I think that they're going to be able to make it to the Super Bowl. They don't match up with the Broncos as well as they did last year because the Broncos secondary, I think, is better than it was last year. While it's relatively the same in terms of you still have Riley Moss, you still have Jaquan, I think Riley has been much more improved this year than he was last year. I don't think Pat Surtain is going to play as bad as he did last year, and he didn't even play that bad. He just let up a big play. The wide receivers for the Bills are not going to be as prosperous in this game because Denver has the secondary to match up with them. Now it comes down to Dre Greenlaw is going to be back for Denver, so their tight ends are going to have a tougher time. And now they need to run the ball very efficiently, which is what they did against Denver last year. But Denver is second in the run game this year now. I don't think that they match up relatively well with Denver. I don't think they match up as well with Denver as they did with the Jaguars. If Josh Allen gets through this game and gets through the Broncos defense and wins in Mile High, I think he's going to be able to get to the Super Bowl. Winning it, we'll see, because there's some good teams in the NFC left. But I do think that he definitely makes it to the Super Bowl if he beats the Broncos. The next game was the Eagles and the 49ers. Now, there's a lot to talk about with the Eagles. Again, more of something that I'm going to talk about in another video. So like and subscribe to go see that. Kevin Patullo's seat obviously is probably, there's no way that he's going to be there next year. There's no reason this team should have this much talent and not be a good offense. A.J. Brown, probably not going to be on this team next year. And he just had a stinker of a game. He couldn't catch the football. I think he was out of position a couple times. And he was really a big reason why the Eagles lost this game. He was a big reason. And then after the game, he doesn't talk to the media, which is going to be a big fine for him. But this really seems like an end of an era for A.J. Brown. He's not going to be in an Eagles uniform next year. This was about as bad of a season as you could see after a Super Bowl. Hopefully you can get an offensive mind that will really revolutionize this offense back to what it was last year. The 49ers are committing sorcery or something. I don't know how they're doing it. Me, along with everyone else, didn't feel that they were going to have a shot in hell in this game. And I don't know, for my notes for the 49ers, what I said, I don't know if you can, I hope you can see that. I just wrote sorcery, only explanation. It has to be the only explanation. What else could you say? How is this team doing this? How are they winning on a consistent basis, beating playoff teams without Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Mykel Williams went out earlier this year. George Kittle tore his Achilles in this game. Brandon Ayuk hasn't been there all year. Trent Williams wasn't in this game. How? What? Shanahan is committing sorcery, and someone has to do something about it. I think that Shanahan should be the coach of the year. I really think he should. And this would have solidified it if it mattered for that race. Obviously, that race ended after week 18. But I really believe Kyle Shanahan is the coach of the year. In the last game on Sunday, we had the Patriots and the Chargers. The Chargers have a whole lot of messy things going on over there. And Justin Herbert stunk up the bed again. The Patriots win this game 16-3. I'm a Justin Herbert supporter. I still believe that he's a top 3 talent in the NFL. But man, the ways in which he's lost his 3 playoff games are the most disastrous losses of any other quarterback. Like we've seen the top end quarterbacks lose games in bad ways. He's lost them in the most disastrous ways that you can possibly lose them. 27-0 in the first one. You blow it, and the Jags win that game. I've been an advocate for that game is not as much as Justin Herbert's fault as it is the rest of the team and Brandon Staley's fault, but it's still a blown 27-point lead. The second time you play the Texans, who, yes, they're a good defense, but you threw 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions. And then now you only score 3 points, and it gets to a point, man, because yes, the team was horrid. The whole offense was as bad as it could possibly get. There wasn't a position group that was good in this game, especially that putrid offensive line, who just got absolutely destroyed by a mediocre pass rush. And Justin Herbert was running for his life the whole game, and I think that's a reason why he missed some things downfield that he probably could have hit. Again, I'm an advocate for Justin Herbert. I was talking to my friend at work while this game was going on about Justin Herbert, and I was mad advocating for Justin Herbert. I was on his side. I was making sure that nobody was slandering his name. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to have to side with my friend on the fact that what he was saying was, at some point, you have to have a Herculean performance and win your team the game, because everything else is going wrong. But we've seen players have everything else going wrong and still win the game because of how amazing their performances was. In all of Justin Herbert's losses in the playoffs, he's been mediocre at best to terrible. He was terrible this year. He was terrible last year. And the first one, I think he was mediocre. We haven't seen the Justin Herbert that we see in the regular season every year in the playoffs once. We've never seen it. Against the Texans this year, we saw him. He had a Herculean performance. They lost that game. If he played the way he played in the Texans game against the Patriots, then this is a whole different story. Even if they lose that game, at least there's something to fight for. He was atrocious in this football game. The takeaway I have from the Patriots in this game is I just don't know if they're quite ready yet. I think their defense played absolutely fantastic, and I also think that was a little bit buoyed by how horrible the Chargers played offensively. Like, they were just so bad offensively, every single position group, that the Patriots didn't have to do that much to be good defensively in that game. But the offensive line didn't perform very well. I think Drake May had some definite mental lapses where he just is in the pocket and he's not secure with the football. It seems like he shouldn't be. He's winding up for throws when it's obvious that he should not be winding up for throws. I think he needs a little bit better ball security in those moments, but these are moments to live. These are moments to learn from. Playing these better teams in the playoffs and better defenses are what he needs to learn from to be better, because he's going to have to play them to make the Super Bowl this year or any year in his career. And I think this is just a learning year for this team in general. I think they're great, and I think they've made it far. But the defense is not reliable from what I've seen all season. Even though they were fantastic in this game and only 3 points from the Chargers, this Chargers offensive unit was so bad that I don't know if I can actually take this as what they are. But they looked very good, and next week they go against the Texans, which I don't think is a very good matchup for this team. But if the defense can play like this again, against how terrible this Texans offense has continued and consistently looked, that's going to be a really good matchup. And the last game of wild card round was the Steelers and the Texans. Shocking. The Steelers lost. They lost 30-6. I did not think that they were going to lose that bad, but I don't know if I'm necessarily shocked that they lost. More that I'll talk about in a later video, but this team is in absolute no man's land right now. What is next? Because Rodgers is probably not coming back next year. This seemed like a sending off type of game. It felt like, and it looked like he was done with the sport of football right then. Mike Tomlin, are you guys going to keep him? Are you going to, he has a contract. Are you going to keep that contract? Like, are you going to, or are you going to fire him and get this new regime going now? The Texans offense though looked deeply concerning. CJ Stroud played one of his worst football games I think I've ever seen him play. The one thing that the Texans were able to do offensively in this game, which is why they won the game, was run the football. CJ was just, I mean, it seemed like he was rattled. He couldn't even catch the snap. There was like 3 or 4 times where he just dropped the ball, like on the snap. He couldn't catch the snap. Like, I don't know. Something rattled him in this game, or maybe it just, with all of this terrible offensive line he's had to deal with for so long, he's just in his head now because he can't trust the offensive line around him or something. I don't know. But CJ this was like probably the worst football game I've ever seen from CJ Stroud. He looked rattled from the first to the last play of the game. Fumbled the ball like 4 times. He threw a pick. He couldn't stop turning the ball over. And if his defense wasn't one of the best defenses, or maybe even the best defense in football, they get blown out in this game. Thank gosh they have freaking the best defense in football, Thank gosh, because CJ Stroud was horrible in this game. And you really, really wonder what's going to happen, because Texans offensive infrastructure, it's kind of similar to the Chargers. This Patriots defense is kind of going up against the same offense in back-to-back weeks with a quarterback who looks rattled as hell. They're probably going to be able to do the exact same thing that they did to the Chargers. And CJ Stroud cannot play this putrid again. He cannot. The fact of the matter is, they're going to run into an offense that's going to be able to score a little bit. The Steelers were just not built well. They don't have good offensive infrastructure, and they were working with a 42-year-old quarterback, and their offensive line was never going to be able to hold up against this pass rush. Eventually, you're going to be able to run into a team that might be able to neutralize the pass rush and neutralize this defense just a little bit. Just a little bit. And that's when your offense has to step up. And is that something we're going to see? Because this really, really looked really bad. They scored 30 points, but there was 2 defensive touchdowns, and the other touchdown was a rushing one. It can't look this bad again, no matter how good this defense is. I've given this defense all the credit in the world and said that it could even win with how bad that CJ Stroud played. If it's this bad, then I might have to take that statement back. That was this week in the NFL Wild Card Edition. I hope you guys enjoyed this watch. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel. I will be posting plenty of videos pertaining to this NFL season. My camera just died, so the rest of this is just going to be my audio. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.